Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Chips, Laurie Anderson, Let X Equal X. For a little bit of levity, lyrics will be split under Let X Equals X and It Tango. Alright, let's dive into this. We have Laurie Anderson's Let X Equal X.
I met this guy, and he looked like he might have been a hat check clerk at an ice rink, which in fact he turned out to be. And I said, "Oh boy, right again. Let X equal X. You know, it could be you. It's a sky blue sky. Satellites are out tonight. Let X equal X. You know, I could write a book, and this book would be thick enough to stun an ox. 'Cause I can see the future, and it's a place about 70 miles east of here where it's lighter. Linger on over here. Got the time? Let X equal X. I got this postcard, and it said, "Dear amigo, dear partner, listener, I just want to say thanks. So, thanks. Thanks for all the presents. Thanks for introducing me to the chief. Thanks for putting on the feedback. Thanks for going all out. Thanks for showing me your Swiss Army knife. Oh, and thanks for letting me autograph your cast. Hug and kisses XXXX 0000. Oh yeah. P.S. I feel like I am in a burning building, and I gotta go, 'cause I feel like I am.
I feel like I really just have to be along for the ride on this one.
And I gotta go.
I mean, that's a really fun pocket right there between the two brass
Don't you think it
instruments.
looks a lot like rain? He said, "Isn't it? Isn't it just? Isn't it just like a woman?" She said, "It's hard say? He said, isn't it? Isn't it just? Isn't it just like a woman? She said, it goes. That's the way it goes. It goes that way. He said, isn't it? Isn't it just like a woman? She said, it takes. It takes one. It takes one too. It takes one to know one. He said, isn't it just like a woman? She said it. She said it to know. She said it to no one. Isn't it? Isn't it just? Isn't it just like a woman? Your eyes, it's a day's work to look into them. Your eyes, it's a day's work just looking into them.
Alright, I gotta hand it to Chips. They consistently provide this channel with some of the more interesting non-metal stuff that shows up on the channel, and I'm very appreciative of them for their suggestions. And while most of them have certainly made me think, I think this is the one that's gonna hit me with the first brick wall, where I'm really lost on it. I am. Here's the interesting thing. So I did a little bit of research, because Chips had mentioned that the lyrics would be split between two songs, but this was not two songs. In fact, while I showed you a picture of the album, what I actually had on my screen was Bandcamp. And the title is Let X Equals X. It is 6 minutes and 57 seconds, which is the length of the song that we listened to. However, on the lyrics page, it is broken up into two songs. If we go to Big Science's album page, it's also listed as just one track. So I'm a little confused about that as well. Is it one song or is it two songs? I'm honestly, I don't know. um, now I'm let me check this out. Laurie Anderson. That looks like her. Big Science. Dang, she has put out a lot of music. Big Science. Now, see, here's interesting. Um, on Bandcamp, there's 8 tracks, in which case this is track 8. On Apple, it doesn't say extended or expanded or deluxe. There are 11 tracks. Let X equal X is only 4 minutes long, where It Tangos is 3 minutes. It's the next song. I'm going to have to look at some of this after the video. I don't want to take up too much time trying to figure out why this song is split in some cases and why it isn't in others. It doesn't feel like it should be split at all. Unlike there's plenty of songs that roll into each other, especially when we have like a 1 minute intro that goes into our first traditional track of the album, usually like a classical intro into your metal song, something like that. They do roll over into each other, but there's also a very clear stop where they were or where they are. You had the classical intro and now you have the metal second one. But this utilizes the exact same musical components in both sections. We have the front beat clap. We have the vibraphone, whatever that is, the glockenspiel, xylophone, marimba, something in that family on the claps. We have the same rhythmic and chordal structures placed throughout. Our vocals are very similar. While they have different rhythmic components to them, they follow in a very similar idea of slowly expanding an idea word by word. They don't feel like two different songs that flow into each other. It feels more like they're unnaturally cut on the one that Apple has. I don't think this should be two songs, and now I'm curious why it is in some cases. So yeah, I have some questions about that. But let's get into the music here. I've already mentioned we have the claps on the front beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our rhythmic accent. However, we also have it on the and, or the half of a beat, or the and that comes prior to the downbeat. So technically, we have 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. So we are getting that accent on the downbeat, but we're also getting an additional hit half of a beat earlier on 1 and 3 consistently through the song. The claps give us it in most cases, however, it is occasionally paired with something else, such as the aforementioned xylophone and other percussive elements. Sometimes it is just the clapping, sometimes it's accompanied. This is prevalent throughout the entire 7 minutes. It is paired with a flurry of other layered rhythmic percussive sounds. While there are actually everything is pitched in a manner. Nothing is really designed to create a melodic idea. You could probably argue that there is a melodic hocket going on through all of these instruments, but at best I would say it's a percussive one. There isn't a strong sense of melody, even when we look at our vocal line, which in most of this is spoken word. It is given a metallic robotic edge that kind of has melodic movement to it in places, but it is still, as far as my ear hears it, primarily spoken word. It is rhythmic without a focus on pitch. That's not to say that there aren't pitched ideas throughout, it's just not the main component. I don't think it was an emphasized aspect during the writing or performing component. of the song. There is one section where we do get a bit of melody. It's the time that we bring in a pitched instrument. We have two brass instruments come in about the 2.5 minute mark and do this. Well, it starts unified, or maybe it's just one instrument, and then eventually they kind of split and create a hocket. And it's short lived, though. It is a very small moment of melody. I don't know what to make of it. Honestly, don't know what to make of most of this. Um, and that's the song. That is the general idea behind the entire 7 minute track here. They do go through a few different styles of percussive layering, and we get different rhythmic approaches to our spoken word, but that's primarily what we get here is spoken word on top of percussive layers. And it is beautiful at times. It's challenging in others, and sometimes it's beautifully challenging. Um, some parts make more sense to me on a connected level where I can feel the emotion. In fact, there is a chord progression that happens somewhere in there. I wish I could tell you a time frame for it, but I genuinely do not remember. There's a synthy chord progression going on that it gave me the idea of reverence of a sort. I couldn't quite place what its purpose, I still can't, in the song. But for a moment there, we got an emotion of reverence where everything else is just sort of existing. And that's sort of my idea with most of this. From a musical perspective, it just is. And that lines up well with the title. Just let X be X. Let something be itself. Don't try to box it in or change it or force it to be something it isn't. The song simply exists and it should be appreciated for that. But I also couldn't help but hear this not as a song, but as performative poetry. And I think there's a very thin line there that some people might not even see. I mean, music is a combination of noise and silence. Some would argue it needs to be precomposed, it needs to have intentionality to it, but others won't. Music can be completely unintentional. But even if you lean on the more conservative idea that it must be intentionally made music and not just something that happens rhythmically, this still seems precomposed with full of intent. There is sounds and silence to it. There are patterns of repeated rhythms and notes. So, I'm not going to say if anybody hears this as music that they're hearing it wrong. There's certainly an argument to be made for it. And that same argument would probably be applicable to any spoken poetry with percussion behind them session. Technically, that would be music. But, and I think that's the difference here. I will not argue that this is music, but I don't feel this is a song, if that makes sense. And I know that that gets even more vague than where I was already going. um, but yeah, I feel like this is more poetry with a drum circle around her and some digital effects on the vocals, more so than a traditional song. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that it the music doesn't seem to elevate the vocals. Maybe when we get into the lyrics, it'll make a bit more sense. The few lyrics I picked up, I'm not thinking so, but See, I don't know how to explain this. I think I lack the vocabulary for this, and I'm just kind of hope that everybody is on a similar page as me, or at least can vibe with the ideas I'm throwing down about it feeling more like poetry than a song to me, even though it's poetry paired with music, which is kind of the base definition of songs. um, but I don't think I can explain it any better than I have. And that's kind of going to be the end of my analysis here, which feels a bit underwhelming for what this is in places, but also it feels a bit overdone. This feels a bit too simple at times to warrant a large analysis, which is interesting because, like I mentioned, Chips tends to give me challenging music, especially modern composers. I typically have a lot to speak about, and I find it really interesting to be given such a challenging, minimalistic piece. Maybe the minimalism has everything to do with it as well. I don't know. Let's hit the lyrics. Maybe with the lyrics, I can circle back and we can do some deeper dive into what's going on with the music. I met this guy, and he looked like might have been a hat check clerk at an ice rink, which, in fact, he turned out to be, and I said, "Oh boy, right again." I heard that line. It was the first time the vocalist had a part, and the music wasn't really doing anything. So I was like, I'll go along for this. What's she going on about? Uh, just it's kind of it's absurd, right? But it's kind of absurd comedy. Like if you write a film about a seer or an oracle or somebody, just a clairvoyant of any sort who can perceive the future, and then just the shtick is that they go up to people, describe the immediate future, it happens, and then they're just like, "Oh boy, right again." It would be kind of uh, like One Punch Man, where like the shtick is that he beats villains in one punch. Like it's kind of dumb, but when you make the show around that concept, it actually can get interesting. But that core concept is just really dumb and absurd. No one would watch a show where the villains are defeated so quickly. But like you could do that with this idea too. Like nobody would watch a show if the main character can just predict the future all the time. But like, what if you made the show around that and you leaned into the absurdity of it? Like I might watch that. Anyways, though, like some of that absurd comedy came out of this opening stanza. Just it gave me a good chuckle, especially the shift to the robotic "oh boy" right away, or sorry, right again. Whole thing just caught me off guard. So let x equal x. You know, it could be you. It's a sky blue sky. The satellites are out tonight. Let x equal x. So my concept of just let things be doesn't really apply so far. I'm not quite sure what she's saying by let x equal x because it's kind of, I mean, the opening part, yeah, you look like a hat check clerk. Oh, you actually were. Things just are how they seem. Things are what they are, right? But then it says that it could be you. There's a sky blue sky and the satellites are out tonight. What could be? Could I be the sky? I mean, is that what's going on here? The next verse says, "You know, I could write a book, and this book would be thick enough to stun an ox, because I can see the future, and it's a place about 70 miles east of here where it's lighter. Linger on over here. Got the time? Let x equal x." Maybe it's not so much about letting things be as much as just taking things at the surface level, not digging into it too deeply. Because honestly, there's a lot of absurdity in this one as well. The future is a place 70 miles east of here. Because, I mean, the the future is technically an essence of time. It is the fourth dimension, whereas east of here is a place. It's part of our XYZ axis. Time is technically a place if you want to perceive it from that dimension, but it isn't so much a location. Well, it's not a. It's a location on the time axis, but she's speaking in a three-dimensional axis. Technically, one-dimensional. It's east of here. But it's part of our three-dimensional grid, not a fourth-dimensional grid. So, like, the more that you dig into this, the less it makes sense, the more absurd it gets. So maybe she's saying just let things be. And I didn't necessarily mean it in this context when I said it, but I said it in the reaction. I think I just need to be along for the ride on this. It was very difficult to actively listen to what was going on this because it was extremely sparse and not everything really lined up musically. Not in a way that I tend to understand music. Like I had mentioned, by the end of the song, I kind of came to appreciate it more as poetry with a musical component than a song. But maybe that's the kind of in-depth analysis that she's actively saying don't do. I got this postcard and it said, "Dear amigo, dear partner, listen, I just want to say thanks." So, thanks. Thanks for all the presents. Thanks for just introducing me to the chief. Thanks for putting on the feed bag. Thanks for going all out. Thanks for showing me your Swiss Army knife. Oh, and thanks for letting me autograph your cast. Hug and kisses. XXX0000. Not X's and O's, X's and zeros. And like, I don't understand any. This feels very personal. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the rest of it. But it also could be completely in a character. It might not have anything to do with her, but it is something that seems to be more directed than the previous stanzas, which were more general. Oh yeah, P.S. I feel like, see, this is something interesting, and this is what I was talking about with the segmented vocal delivery. Up until this point, pretty much everything has been either straightforward said or fairly colloquial, such as the "oh" and thanks, putting in those little uh, time taker uppers. When you can't really figure out what you want to say, so you put in the ooh, and so a little bit of that's colloquial, but most of it is very straightforward read. Then we get down here to the bottom and we have a lot of what in speech would be stuttering. I feel like, and this continues on into the next track, It Tango, which is just, what does that title mean? Um, but this is why I don't really feel that much of a disconnect, especially on the musical side, where we continue to hear the same hand clapping and all that, but this rhythmic pattern gets continued into the next track as well, which just boggles my mind why it's separated on any release of this album. Anyways, oh yeah, P.S. I feel like I'm in a burning building and I gotta go 'cause I feel like I am in a burning building and I gotta go. I assume this is a letter. So by the time the person receives it, this person should no longer be in a burning building, so the PS is actually not too necessary for the message, but at the same time, if you're in a burning building, one, what are you writing a letter for to begin with? But two, why are you wasting time with the PS? You should be worrying about getting out of this building. So absurdity, right? But when you dig into it, it doesn't make sense for its inclusion. Just enjoy the ride. I really think that's what we're going for here. Now, this pushes into It Tango, which, as I mentioned musically, doesn't really change much. The lyrics, I don't even know what was going on here. She said, "It looks, don't you think it looks a lot like rain?" He said, "Isn't it? Isn't it just? Isn't it just like a woman?" She said, It's hard. It's just hard. It's just kind of hard to say. He said, isn't it? Isn't it just like a woman? She said it goes. That's the way it goes. It goes that way. He said, isn't it? Isn't it just like so every single time she says something, he returns and say, isn't it like a woman? She says it takes one to know one. He says, isn't it just like a woman? She said it to no one. Isn't it just like a woman? Your eyes, it's a day's work to look into them. What? It's a day's work to look into your eyes. Okay, that legitimately caught me off guard. That's good. Makes no sense. So here it just seems like there's a massive disconnect between the two people. There is an emphasis on the gender of them. We have specifically she said and he said, and even more specifically, she said. She is attempting to bring up conversation. Don't you think it looks a lot like rain? Sometimes that's just the way it goes. It takes one to know one. There's a conversation here. It's a bit disjointed, but there's progression of ideas, whereas our he only says one word, and it's specifically, isn't it just like a woman? I don't want to read too much into this because honestly, everything up to this point has just been supremely absurd. And even this conversation is absurd in a way that's almost, at least in my mind, entirely caricature. But it seems to emphasize a male mindset that is hyper focused on women and specifically things that can be referred to as women. Much like, I suppose, in the vein that people refer to their cars as her. She needs a tune up or stuff like that. It's like, I've always found that kind of weird, but it is a part of at least American culture from years past. I don't know how prevalent it is with my generation or how prevalent it will be with the next. I assume not much will change. But in my experience, it's mostly older people who see a lot of things through the lens of it being a woman, which is kind of weird. Um, or it could just be an entirely focused on the idea of a man with women on his mind, maybe even uh, to take that into another direction of sex on his mind. No matter what it is, it reminds of a woman. And so we have a female character who is apparently trying to have a conversation about stuff, even starting with the time old classic of bringing up the weather for small talk, and a man who can only seem to talk about women. I don't want to inherently, or I don't want to explicitly say that this is what Laurie is trying to lean into on this aspect because it feels a bit too on the nose, where nothing else here is. But it also seems to very explicitly be saying that, or at least that's what I'm pulling out of it as an extremely clear thing. It's the only stanza that's made any sense to me thus far. But it feels so odd to have it packed in against all this absurdistness. And these lyrics have not helped me at all to understand what the song is doing musically. I still kind of feel like this is poetry with percussive, a drum circle around her. There are moments that are more musical. We do have chord progressions showing up at times. We have a small melodic hocket in our brass section, but they are fragments of the song that do not show up through most of it. I don't know. Chips, if your goal has been to confuse me and bewilder me and finally get me to a point where I throw my hands up and say, I don't get this song at all, I think you've done it. There's been a couple of tracks so far that have put me at this area. And I'm just like, you guys are going to have to explain this one to me. But as far as you're tossing me more and more interesting challenging tracks. This is definitely the one that you've given me that is the highest hurdle to jump. Those are my thoughts on Laurie Anderson's Let X Equal X, and in some cases also It Tango. Let me know what you thought. Hit me up in the comments. Post your thoughts. If you enjoyed it or not, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, let me know. Above that, if you could, head into the description box and there's a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel. You can find multiple ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord community, links to the music I've created, and so much more. Check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue exploring New Wave Week and look at another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.